Hello, world. Mr. Girly Micro here. Another blog for Girly Micro. And this is one of the first ones that I think of as being a proper science. And yes, I am using air quotes when I say that. This is one of those ones when I say proper science, I mean that some of the words are in English, but I'm not sure the order's the right way, or some of the syllables are in English, but I'm not sure they're assembled the right way. But anyway, over to Girly Micro. And remember, all opinions are our own.
This blog post was first posted on the 16th of October 2020 and is entitled A Starter for 10 on Antimicrobials. After my sojourn in my ivory tower on Friday, I wanted to get back to posting about antibiotics this week. Although I only really intend to post once a week, I thought it was useful, if I'm going to be posting about antimicrobial resistance or AMR, to post a little bit about what an antimicrobial actually is. But first, what is a microbe? My husband reminds me that I use a lot of words interchangeably, and this can make me a little bit hard to follow. First of all, I should explain that microbiology and microbe are cover-all terms, including viruses, bacteria, parasites, and fungi. You can then subgroup within that and talk about parasitology, virology, bacteria, and mycology, or the study of fungi. So, what is an antimicrobial? An antimicrobial is a medicine that inhibits the growth of or destroys microorganisms. So, antimicrobials don't just work against bacteria, they work against microbes, hence the name. That said, one antimicrobial won't work against all sorts of microbes, it's just a cover all name. Specific groups work against specific types of microbe. So, antivirals work against viruses, antibacterials, more normally called antibiotics, work against bacteria, antifungals work against fungi, and antiparasitics, you've guessed it, work against parasites. That said, most of the time when people are talking about antimicrobial resistance, they are actually talking about antibacterial resistance. So that is what this post is going to focus on. So antibiotics work in two main ways. They either are bacteriostatic, which inhibit the growth of bacteria, or bactericidal, which kill bacteria. Now, whether an antibiotic kills the bacteria or just stops it reproducing is important when we're deciding which one we need to choose clinically. For example, if I have a patient who has no immune system or whose immune system isn't working, so somebody on cancer treatment potentially, I can't use an antibiotic that just stops the bacteria from growing, as their own immune system won't be able to attack the remaining bacteria. If I have a patient that has no white cells, I need to use an antibiotic that kills the bacteria instead. If you actually go to the blog post, the link is in the chat next to this, you can actually see a table which has some of the different groups or classes of antibiotics, and they're color coded with whether they kill or stop growth. The main thing is whether an antibiotic kills or stops growth really depends on what part of the bacteria it targets. It's very hard for a bacteria to survive if it has a hole in its cell wall. It's kind of like us having a massive hole in our skin. And so antibiotics that target the cell wall of bacteria, like penicillin, which is a beta-lactam, they're usually bactericidal. Antibiotics that target protein synthesis, which is what the bacteria need to reproduce and grow, are usually bacteriostatic, like erythromycin, which is macrolide. One of the other considerations when deciding which antibiotic to use is whether we are using it to treat an infection, so treatment, or to prevent an infection occurring, called prophylaxis. We use prophylaxis if you're undergoing certain types of surgery or when we know you've been exposed to certain bacteria or other microbes. The aim of this is at reducing any small numbers of bacteria you may have on board in order to prevent infection or symptoms. Now, these doses are often different to treatment doses, and we'll usually try to give the medicine orally if possible, i.e., via pills, rather than by injection or by IV. As antibiotics usually accumulate in the system or the area of body we're trying to target, if you get an infection, it's really important that you complete the dose. So, the total number of days and doses that are given to you. If you don't do this and you stop when you're just feeling better, the number of bacteria that are left can then grow and multiply again, and these could cause you to need another course. Worse than that, though, potentially, is the bacteria may then become resistant to the first antibiotic we gave you. So, antibiotic resistance means that the bacteria is no longer affected by the antibiotic, i.e., it doesn't work at all or it works less well. This means that you may need to be given another antibiotic that is less ideal than the one we originally gave you if you actually don't complete the course and cause resistance to arise. So, when we say less ideal, I'm talking about more side effects, or it not being taken orally, or may need you to take more doses than you would do otherwise. The key thing is antibiotic resistance doesn't mean that your body is resistant to the antibiotic, which people often tell me. It actually means that the fact that the bacteria are just no longer impacted. As well as some bacteria developing resistance to an antibiotic due to exposure, there are also some bacteria that are intrinsically or naturally resistant to certain antibiotics. In some cases, this is because the features of the bacteria that have certain aspects to them. So, one really good example of this is that bacteria are divided into gram positive and gram negative bacteria based on their cell wall, plus some oddities like mycobacteria, which we're not going to talk about today. Antibiotics like vancomycin don't work on gram-negative bacteria, as the molecule is too big to actually physically get through the cell wall. If you'd like more details about different antibiotic classes, the antibiotics within them, how they're used, and mechanisms of resistance, there's also a table that I put together as part of FRC Path Revision that's on the original blog post, which you are free to download and have a look at. But until you decide to go there, here are some points to reflect on. Antimicrobial is a term used to cover drugs for parasites, fungi, bacteria, and viruses. Antibiotics can be either bacteriostatic or bactericidal. Antibiotics target different parts of the bacteria, and that is what makes them either kill or inhibit growth. And finally, antimicrobial resistance can be acquired or intrinsic due to the features of the bacteria themselves. All opinions on this blog are my own.